The art gallery buzzed with conversations, attendees marveling at the grandiose displays of sculptures and paintings. But in one corner of the room, the tension crackled like electricity. An elegantly dressed curator towered over a young independent artist, his finger pointing aggressively towards his exhibition. "This is unacceptable," the curator barked, his voice echoing throughout the room. "Your work is not aligned with the vision of this event. It's time to pack up and leave." The artist's voice was trembling as he tried to answer. "But people are attracted to her. They are connecting with the message." "I don't care," interrupted the curator, his tone icy. "You don't belong here." The uproar caught the attention of those present, some pretending not to notice, others muttering to each other. Among them was Keanu Reeves, calmly watching the scene unfold. His expression darkened as he took a step forward, his voice cutting through the tension like a razor. "Excuse me," Keanu said, his calm tone hiding the fire underneath. "Why are you silencing an artist? Art shouldn't fit in a box, it's supposed to challenge it." The curator turned around, his face twisting in annoyance. "With all due respect, Mr. Reeves, this is none of your business." Keanu took a step closer, his gaze steady and unwavering. "Now it is." The room fell silent, the air heavy with anticipation. All eyes were on Keanu as he prepared to defend the artist against the curator's authority. The gallery, a maze of contemporary art and classic pieces, had been curated to perfection. The guests wandered about, their soft murmurs mingling with the delicate clink of champagne glasses. However, all serenity broke down in a corner where a heated discussion was taking place. Keanu Reeves, an art lover and occasional collector, had been quietly enjoying the evening when the commotion caught his attention. Attracted by the raised voices, he made his way through the crowd, stopping before a modest display of vibrant, raw paintings. The works depicted powerful and emotional scenes of identity and resistance, captivating even among the most polished pieces in the gallery. The independent artist was standing next to his work, visibly upset, while the curator stood over them. The tension between the two was almost palpable. "This work," the curator said harshly, "is out of place here. It's not refined, and, frankly, it's a bummer compared to the rest of the gallery. I've made my decision. Take it off." The artist, with trembling hands, tried to defend himself. "But people have been staying here all night. They have told me how much this speaks to them. He can't just..." "Stop it," the curator barked, interrupting them. "This is my event, and I decide that it stays. That I hadn't seen enough." Advancing, he cleared his throat, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. "I think you're missing the point," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Art isn't meant to conform to your standards, it's meant to evoke something in people. And from what I've seen, this artist is doing exactly that." The crowd around them froze, whispers fading as they turned their attention to the unexpected confrontation. The curator, visibly upset, turned to Keanu. "With all due respect, Mr. Reeves, this is none of your business. You are here as a guest, not as a judge." Ken's expression, "I see you. As a guest, I'm saying what I see, people are stopping here, connecting with these pieces. Isn't that what art is supposed to do? Or are you just here to sell what looks good on a living room wall?" The tension in the corner of the gallery was palpable, as if the air itself had become denser with discomfort. Keanu Reeves remained upright, his calmness a marked difference from the nervous artist and the increasingly agitated curator. The crowd around him was growing by the second, attracted by the magnetism of the confrontation. "You don't belong here," the curator repeated, his voice cutting through the murmurs of those present. He made a gesture of contempt towards the modest exhibition of the artist's paintings. "This event is about refinement and prestige. Your work is neither of those two things." The artist clenched his fists, his voice trembling with restrained emotion. "These paintings are not made to be refined, they are made to be real. They reflect the struggles that people face every day." The murmurs of the crowd grew louder. Whispers like "this is not fair," and "why are they attacking them?" started spreading among the attendees. Quenu, silent but attentive, scanned the faces of the guests. I could see the conflict growing, not only between the curator and the artist, but within the room itself. A young man near the front of the meeting finally spoke up. "I don't know about the others, but this is the only part of the gallery that made me stop and think. Everything else seems to be trying too hard." Several people nodded in agreement, encouraged by his words. "Yes," added a middle-aged woman. "These paintings have something the others don't, heart." The curator's face flushed as he tried to regain control of the situation. "This is not a popularity contest," he said. "This gallery represents a standard of excellence, and I have the right to apply it." Kenu's voice, calm but forceful, broke the noise. "Excellence is not about fitting into a box," he said. "It's about connection. And from what I'm hearing, these works are connecting with people." The curator turned to him, his expression a mixture of frustration and disbelief. "With all due respect, Mr. Reeves, you are an actor, not an art critic. This is my gallery, and I decide what stays." Kenu took a step closer, his steady gaze meeting the curator's. "He's right," he said. "I am not an art critic. But I'm someone who values authenticity. These paintings are doing something that no level of refinement can. They are starting conversations, arousing emotions. Isn't that what art is supposed to do?" The room fell silent as the weight of Kenu's words settled on the crowd. The artist, encouraged by their support, took a deep breath and spoke again. "These works may not fit your definition of prestige, but they are real. They talk about the lives of people who are often ignored. If that doesn't belong in a gallery, then what does?" The curator, clearly puzzled, crossed his arms. "This is not up for debate. This gallery has a reputation to maintain. If I allow this exhibit to stay, it will set a precedent for mediocrity." Who did not raise an eyebrow, his expression calm and unalterable. "Mediocrity, is that how you call for honesty, for struggle, for humanity? If that's mediocre to you, maybe the problem isn't the art, but your definition of what matters." A wave of small gasps and murmurs swept through the crowd. The balance of power was shifting, and everyone could feel it. From the back of the crowd, an older man advanced. Dressed in an elegant suit, he carried an air of authority that made people turn away in his wake. "I've been attending these events for years," he said, his voice heavy with a gravity that demanded attention. "And I can tell you this, most of what we see here is forgettable, these pieces. They'll stay with me." The curator's jaw tensed as the man addressed the artist. "Don't let anyone tell you that your job doesn't matter," he said. "It does matter. And if they can't see it, it's their loss." The crowd broke into gentle applause, the momentum tilting firmly in the artist's favor. Kino looked at the older man, giving him an appreciative nod. The curator, now visibly cornered, tried one last attempt. "It's okay," he said, his voice trembling slightly. But if this stays, I can't guarantee that the gallery's reputation won't suffer. Kenu let out a light laugh. If your gallery's reputation is based on excluding voices like this, maybe it deserves to change. The crowd erupted in applause, their cheers echoing around the hall. The curator, realizing that he had lost the room, muttered something between his teeth and left. As the crowd began to disperse, the artist turned to Kenu, his eyes filled with tears. "I don't know how to thank him," they said. "I didn't have to do this." Who smiled at us, her voice soft. "You don't need to thank me. Just keep creating. The world needs more than you have to say." By the end of the night, the story of the confrontation had spread like wildfire. Attendees shared videos and photos on social media, with captions such as, "Keanu Reeves defending true art, what a legend. This is why he is not the best of us. He's telling the truth." The artist's exhibition, which was about to be withdrawn, became the most visited part of the gallery. Lines formed as people waited to see the paintings that had sparked such a powerful moment. The gallery, once filled with the gentle murmur of polite conversation, was now alive with whispers and tension. The confrontation between Keanu Reeves, the independent artist, and the curator had captured almost everyone's attention. The attendees abandoned their tours of other exhibits to gather around, forming a semicircle of spectators. All eyes were fixed on the unfolding drama. Kenu, standing with his characteristic calm tone but of unmistakable intensity, ran his gaze through the crowd. His very presence inspired respect, and his words carried weight. The artist was standing next to him, his hands trembling slightly, but the fire in his eyes was growing. This was no longer just about his work, but about everything he represented. A middle-aged woman, who had been silently watching, suddenly took a step forward. "You know, I came here because I wanted to feel something," she said, her voice breaking the silence. "I've seen dozens of beautiful paintings tonight, but none made me stop like this exhibit." "He's talking to me." The curator, already puzzled, turned to her with a forced smile. "I understand your perspective, but the vision of this gallery is to maintain a certain level of refinement. It's about presenting art that aligns with our standards." "With the standards of who?" interrupted a young man, taking a step forward from the crowd. "Because it looks like they're just putting up barriers. Art isn't supposed to fit a mold, it's supposed to challenge us." The murmurs got louder, spreading through the crowd as more people nodded in agreement. The curator's control over the situation was crumbling, and he didn't take advantage of the moment to press further. "Art is not about making people feel comfortable," Kenu said, his voice firm but serene. "It's about making them think, feel, and question. If this exhibition is provoking that kind of reaction, then it's doing exactly what art is supposed to do." The crowd burst into applause, and the curator's face turned crimson. "Mr. Reeves," he began, his voice tense, "with all due respect, you are an actor, not an expert in art." He doesn't understand the subtleties of curating a gallery like this. Who did not slightly tilt his head, his attitude calm and unalterable. "You're right, I'm not an art expert. But I know authenticity when I see it. I recognize the courage it takes to create something raw, something real. And I know that dismissing it because it doesn't fit into your idea of subtlety is exactly what's wrong with spaces like this." The tension between Kenu and the curator increased, their voices rising high enough to capture the full attention of the room. "He can't just come in here and dictate how we do things," the curator snapped. "This gallery has a reputation to maintain." Kenu's eyes narrowed. "And what a reputation that is," one that silences voices that don't conform, one that prioritizes status over content. The crowd murmured in agreement, and the artist, encouraged by Kenu's words, took a step forward. He doesn't create these pieces to fit into a gallery's reputation, they said, their voice steady. I created them because they reflect real experiences, mine and those of many others. If that doesn't belong here, then maybe this gallery isn't about art at all. The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of his words settling on everyone. From the back of the crowd, an elegantly dressed older man advanced, his voice calm but firm. I've been coming to galleries like this for decades, he said. And can I tell you that most of what I see is forgettable, these pieces. They are unforgettable. Maybe it's time for this gallery to rethink its definition of excellence. The curator faltered, his confidence visibly shaken. This is not about personal preferences, he stammered. It's about maintaining standards. Standards that exclude voices like this, a young woman challenged from the crowd. That sounds more like elitism to me. What didn't he turn to the crowd, his voice calm but full of conviction? Art does not belong to an elected few. It belongs to everyone. And when you silence voices like this, you're not just suppressing creativity, you're suppressing progress. The applause that followed was thunderous. People were clapping, cheering, and shouting their support, drowning out any further protests from the curator. Kenu turned to the artist, giving them a nod of support. Keep creating, he said quietly. Your voice matters. The crowd, now completely united behind Kenu and the artist, began to take action. Some started sharing photos and videos of the exhibition on social media, while others openly criticized the way the gallery handled the situation. This is the best part of the whole exhibition, said one guest, taking a photo. And they wanted to remove it. Ridiculous. Another guest, a local journalist, started taking notes. This story needs to be told, he said. People need to know what's going on here. The curator, realizing that he had lost control of the room, tried to save his image. It's all right, he said stiffly. The exhibition can stay. But this is highly irregular, and it's not how we normally do things. Who did not hint a slight smile, his expression one of silent triumph. Maybe it's time to do things in a new way. The crowd erupted into cheers once again, and the artist's face lit up with a mixture of relief and gratitude. The moment marked a turning point, not only for the artist, but for everyone in the room. The gallery had become a battlefield of ideals. The curator, once confident of his authority, was now on shaky ground as the crowd rallied behind Keanu Reeves. And the independent artist. The murmurs of dissent had become a symphony of voices demanding justice, and the curator's attempts to regain control only added fuel to the fire. Kenu, standing tall and serene, took a step forward, his presence capturing all the attention. This is not just about an exhibition, he began, his voice firm but full of calm conviction. This is about what art represents: truth, emotion, and the courage to challenge the status quo. If this gallery cannot accept that, then it is failing in its purpose. The curator clenched his fists, his face flushing as he struggled to keep his composure. Mr. Reeves, he said, his voice strained, I understand your passion, but you are oversimplifying the problem. A gallery like this has a responsibility to maintain certain standards. Kenu raised an eyebrow, his calm demeanor remaining intact. Standards shouldn't be an excuse to silence voices that don't fit your expectations. If art is only allowed to fit into neat little boxes, then it's not art, it's decoration. The crowd erupted in applause, their cheers and ovations echoing through the great hall. The curator's confidence wavered as he looked around, realizing how much support he had lost. The artist, encouraged by Kenu's unwavering support, took a step forward. His voice, though trembling, carried a new strength. These paintings are about real people and real struggles. They're not supposed to be comfortable or pretty. They're supposed to make people feel something. Isn't that what art is for? A young woman in the crowd nodded emphatically. Exactly. I've seen dozens of paintings here tonight, and most of them seem to me lifeless. This is the only exhibition that made me stop and think. Another guest chimed in. This is the kind of art we need, something that challenges us, not just something that matches our furniture. The curator seemed increasingly cornered, his attempts to defend himself drowned out by the rising tide of support for the artist. Kenu turned to the crowd, his gaze sweeping the sea of faces. Art belongs to everyone, he said, his voice charged with undeniable authority. It's not about fitting into a narrow definition of what is acceptable. It's about giving people a voice, especially those who are often ignored. He pointed to the artist's exhibition. This job does that. He speaks to people. And that's why I'm poor. The crowd roared with approval, their applause shaking the very walls of the gallery. The curator, now visibly bewildered, tried one last retort. This is extremely unusual, he murmured. We can't just throw our standards out the window. Who did not turn to him, her expression calm but firm. Maybe it's time to redefine your standards. Because what I'm seeing here is exactly what art should be. While the curator hesitated, the members of the crowd began to take matters into their own hands. The guests began to post photos and videos of the confrontation on social networks, accompanied by phrases such as, Keanu Reeves defending true art, this is why he is the best. Art is not about conformity. It's about the truth. The videos quickly gained traction online, with comments from people around the world praising Kenu's actions and supporting the artist's work. The curator, realizing that he had lost the room, raised his hands in resignation. It's okay, he said, his voice heavy with frustration. The exhibition can stay. But don't expect this to become the norm. Who smiled slightly at us, her calm confidence remaining intact. Maybe it should become the norm. Art is meant to evolve, not stagnate. The crowd erupted into cheers once again, their voices echoing through the hall like a victory hymn. The artist, overwhelmed with gratitude, turned to Kenu, his eyes filled with tears. Thank you, they said quietly. I don't know what I would have done without you. Kenu placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. You don't have to thank me. Just keep creating. The world needs voices like yours. When the evening came to an end, the artist's exhibition had become the most popular section of the gallery. The guests were lining up to see the pieces that had provoked such a powerful moment, their whispers of admiration filling the air. Social networks were ablaze with posts about the incident, with hashtags as Art for Everyone and Kenu defends art being a global trend. The artist, once overlooked and discarded, suddenly found himself at the center of a global conversation about the importance of inclusivity in the art world. In the following days, the curator was forced to reflect on the incident. Although he publicly maintained his stance on the gallery's standards, it became clear that his reputation had taken a hit. Both guests and critics began to question whether his approach to curating was outdated. Meanwhile, the artist continued to gain recognition, his work appearing in articles, interviews, and even in other gallery exhibitions. When they were asked about the incident, they always credited Kenu for standing up for them. He not only defended my work, the artist said in an interview. He reminded everyone why art matters in the first place. The tension in the gallery began to dissipate, replaced by the electrifying energy of change. The curator's once imposing presence had faded, and the crowd now lined up firmly behind Keanu Reeves and the artist. What had started as a silent confrontation had turned into a powerful moment of unity and defiance. The artist's modest exhibition, which had been discarded and almost dismantled, was now the center of attention. The guests crowded around the paintings, their conversations full of life and passion. The energy was contagious, and even those who had initially been indifferent found themselves attracted. The curator, realizing the magnitude of what had happened, tried to regain some control. "It's okay," he said, his voice strained and heavy with effort. "The exhibition can stay. But let me make something clear, this is an exception, not the rule." Kenu took a step forward, his expression calm but determined. "Maybe it's time to make this the rule," he said. "Art is not about conforming to outdated standards. It's about evolving, challenging, and inspiring." The crowd erupted in applause, their cheers echoing in the great hall. The curator, clearly uncomfortable, muttered something between his teeth before retreating into the shadows of the gallery. The artist, still stunned by the overwhelming support, turned to Kenu, his voice trembling with emotion. "I can't believe this is happening. I thought I was finished. Thank you for standing up for me." Kenu gave them a reassuring smile. "You defended yourself first. I just made sure everyone was listening to you." The guests began to approach the artist, asking about his work and sharing how the paintings had touched them deeply. One young woman wiped away tears as she described how one of the pieces reminded her of her late mother. An older man nodded solemnly, saying, "Your paintings, they don't just talk. They scream." The artist's confidence grew with each interaction. His initial fear and doubt is replaced by a sense of validation and pride. Meanwhile, the story of the confrontation spread like wildfire online. Videos of Kenu's passionate defense and the crowd's support went viral, racking up millions of views within a few hours. Subtitles as Keanu Reeves proves once again why he is the best of us. This is what real leadership means, standing up for what matters. Trending like he doesn't advocate for art and art for all flooded social media platforms, with users from all over the world sharing their thoughts and reactions. "This is why I love Kenu," it read in a tweet. "He doesn't just talk about kindness and justice, he lives them." As the story gained traction, other artists began to share their own experiences of being excluded or ignored by the art world. Galleries and curators faced increasing scrutiny, with the public demanding more inclusion and fewer barriers. A well-known artist posted on Instagram, "What happened with Kenu and that artist is a wake-up call for all of us. Art should be about voices, not just visions." Smaller galleries took note, and several announced plans to host exhibitions specifically for underrepresented artists. The ripple effect of that moment in the gallery began to transform conversations about art and accessibility. The incident also caught the attention of the mainstream media. The news covered the story extensively, presenting it as a turning point in the art world. The headlines ranged from "Keanu Reeves unleashes an artistic revolution" to "a lesson in humility," as an actor changed the rules of a gallery. Journalists approached the artist for interviews, eager to hear his side of the story. In a particularly emotional interview, the artist said, "For years, I felt that my work didn't matter because I didn't fit the mold. Kenu reminded me, and the world, that art is not about fitting in. It's about standing out. Despite the overwhelming praise, Kenu remained characteristically humble. When asked about the incident during a press tour for his upcoming film, he downplayed his role. "I only said what needed to be said," he told reporters. The real credit goes to the artist for creating something so powerful. Still, his actions left a lasting impression on those who witnessed them. One guest, a regular at the gallery, summed it up best, who not only defended an artist. She stood up for all of us who once felt that our voices didn't matter. Back in the gallery, the aftermath of the incident was impossible to ignore. The artist's exhibition, previously hidden in a corner, had become the center of the exhibition. The guests crowded to see the paintings, their conversations full of emotion and admiration. The gallery itself faced pressure to change its practices. Critics and patrons alike were calling for greater inclusiveness, urging the institution to rethink its approach to curatorship. The curator, though reluctantly, was forced to issue a public statement. "We recognize the importance of representing diverse voices in art, and are committed to reevaluating our standards to better reflect this value." By the time the exhibition closed, the artist's work had gained widespread recognition. They received invitations to exhibit their pieces in other galleries, and their story continued to inspire conversations about art and authenticity. As for Kenu, his actions that night became another chapter in the legend of his kindness and integrity. Fans and admirers from all over the world celebrated him not only as an actor, but as a defender of justice and creativity. The repercussions of the confrontation in the gallery extended far beyond its walls. Social media was flooded with videos, comments, and hashtags celebrating Kenu's actions and the artist's work. The media picked up the story, framing it as a turning point in the conversation about inclusion in the art world. The artist, previously unknown and ignored, suddenly found himself in the spotlight. Invitations from other galleries and interviews with prominent media outlets arrived. "This is not just about me," the artist said in an interview. "It's about every artist who was ever told that their voice didn't matter." Kenu, true to his nature, stayed out of the spotlight, but his impact was undeniable. Fans and followers flooded their social networks with messages of gratitude and admiration. One comment summed it up perfectly, that he doesn't just act in movies, he acts for people. The incident sparked a larger movement within the art community. Galleries around the world began to reevaluate their curatorial practices, with many pledging to offer more opportunities to underrepresented artists. Community organizations were formed to support emerging talents, inspired by the story of the artist, who stood firm with Kenu by his side. Meanwhile, the curator of the gallery where the confrontation occurred faced increasing criticism. Although he publicly defended his actions as maintaining professional standards, the backlash forced him to resign from his position. His replacement, a younger, more progressive curator, announced a complete overhaul of the gallery's policies, promising to prioritize diversity and authenticity in the future. The artist's journey became a beacon of hope for others in similar positions. Online communities sprang up that shared stories of perseverance and celebrated voices that had previously been silenced. Months later, the artist presented a new collection inspired by the events of that night. Titled The Defender, the series included bold and evocative pieces celebrating resilience, courage, and the power of community. The centerpiece of the collection was a striking portrait of an upright figure in the middle of a chaotic crowd, his imposing and unwavering presence. It was a clear tribute to Kenu, although the artist never explicitly said it. The exhibition attracted record crowds, with visitors traveling from all over the world to see the works that had come to symbolize a cultural shift. Among them was Kenu, who attended the inauguration in a discreet way, avoiding the spotlight, but visibly moved by what he saw. When the event came to an end, the artist saw him in the crowd. They approached him, their gratitude evident in their expression. "I hope these pieces honor what you did that night," they said quietly. Who didn't smile, his humility shining through. "You don't need to honor me. You're the one who turned this into something bigger." The story of that night at the gallery became more than just a viral moment, it became a movement. The willingness of No to stand up for the right thing, and the resilience of the artist in the face of adversity, inspired countless people to find their own voices. For Kenu, it wasn't about the praise or the recognition. "I just did what anyone should do," he said in a rare interview about the incident. "When you see that someone is being silenced, you speak up. It's that simple." And yet, his actions reminded the world that sometimes the simplest gestures can have the most profound impact. The legacy of that night endured, not only in the artist's work, but in the hearts of all who witnessed it, proving once again that Keanu Reeves was not just a star, he was a light.